Islam, 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 rising to my highest height. Allah, Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day through his holy prophet, Ali. I'm rising to my highest height again, giving perfect praise to Allah, extending honors to all the true and divine prophets, namely Confucius, to the last prophet in these days and times, the Honorable Prophet Noble Ali. I want to extend further honors to the forerunner and homage of the Prophet, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the leader and founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, who did indeed warn and stir up the nations. I want to extend further honors to the Moorish flag. That's the red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center. Those 5 points representing the 5 highest principles known to man, being love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I want to extend further honors to the Moorish Divine and National Movement, to the Moorish Holy Temple of Science of the World, free and sundry more science to America, to the National Grand Sheikh Jelani Bey, to all the members, citizens, staff, officials, guests, etc. Grand Sheikh Akeem, Islam, Islam, Islam. To be proclaimed in every meeting, dear brothers, Islam. I'm glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There's a host of jealousy about me in the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claimed it was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as an American citizen, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so they themselves may take charge of the situation. I've notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that contribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me in the movement will be remembered. That is why I'm calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance and I need it bad. Never before have I needed finance as badly as I do at present, that I may shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without me, the prophet, being the head. It has been proven by my work in which I have performed in the last few months, because I was at the governor's inauguration to represent the Moorish Divine and National Movement, and I will be at the inauguration of President Hua for the same cause. Divine warning by the Prophet Noble Ali. The Prophet warns all Muslims, governors order to read proclamation at each meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical, agitating speeches while at work in their homes or in the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings towards the temple, the prophet, or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the laws laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their car and button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where the prophet found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the Prophet Noble Ali, and if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet therefore is sending out a divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. By order of Prophet Noble Ali. Islam, Islam, Islam. So Islam Moors, what I wanted to discuss today was, has anybody heard of the, or are y'all familiar with the Sundry Free Moors Act of 1790? Islam, everybody else? Y'all familiar with that act?
No, Grand Sheikh.
No? All right. So really quickly, right? So it says right here, right? The Moors Sundry Act of 1790, right, was a 1790 advisory resolution passed by South Carolina House of Representatives, clarifying the status of free subjects of the Sultan of Morocco, right, Mohammed bin Abdullah, right? It says the resolution offered the opinion that free citizens of Morocco were not subject to laws governing blacks and slaves. Right? So this was an act that was actually passed. It was an advisory resolution. So it wasn't actually like, you know, technically it wasn't like law, but it was recognized. Right? And this is during 1790, because during the same time, they had just passed the South Carolina, let's see, what was it, the Negro Act. Was it 1790? Okay, so I guess it was 1740. Well, yeah, so it was the 1740 Negro Act, right? Which was passed in the province of South Carolina. So during this time, right, they had passed I gotta like shrink my screen because I gotta. So they passed these laws that limited, you know, if you was classified as a Negro or African American in that time, or African in that time, you were pretty much governed under these acts. This Negro Act, right, which said things like a slave may by the consent of his master acquire and hold personal property, right? But he had to get consent from his master. All thus required is regarded in law as that of the master. So it didn't really belong to him, right? It says across the South, state Supreme Court supported the position of this law. O'Neill was the only one to express protest against the act, arguing that the propriety of receiving testimony from enslaved Africans, many of whom had become Christians under oath, right? Negroes, slave or free, will feel the sanctions of an oath with as much force as any of the ignorant classes of white people in a Christian country. So remember how the prophet said how we lost our nationality, right? Right. So the Sundry Free Moors Act of 1790 was kind of like a response to that Negro Act of 1740. Right. Again, because if at that time you was a dark-skinned person and you identified as a Negro, you fell under those laws. Right. As it says, you know, as a Christian. Right. It says many of whom had become Christians, and it says under oath. And it says Negro, slave or free will feel the sanctions of an oath with as much force as any of the ignorant classes of white people in a Christian nation. Right. And it was actually called an act for the better ordering and governing of Negroes and other slaves in this province, or the Slave Code of South Carolina. Right. So it says on January 20th, 1790, a petition was presented to the South Carolina House of Representatives from a group of 4 individuals who were subjects of the Moroccan emperor and residents of the state. Right. So again, subjects of the Moroccan emperor. Right. They desired that if they happen to commit any fault amenable to be brought to justice, that as subjects to a prince allied with the United States through the Moroccan American Treaty of Friendship, they would be tried as citizens instead of under the Negro Act of 1740. Right. So again, this was a petition in response to the Negro Act. Right. So it says the Free Moors, right, Francis, Daniel, Hammond, and Samuel petitioned on behalf of themselves and their wives, Fatima, Flora, Sarah, and Clorinda. Right. And if you notice, Some of these are like, Hebrew names, right? You got Daniel, right? Hamon or Hammond, Samuel, right? Even the wives, right? If you got Fatima, which is like an Arabic name, right? Sarah, right? Which is like a Hebrew name for a woman, right? It says they explained how some years ago, while fighting in defense of their country, they and their wives were captured and made prisoners of war, right, by an African king. So where they get us confused is that they tell us that we were slaves, right? They say, oh, y'all descend from slaves. That's not technically accurate, right? What we got to understand is that we are POWs. We really prisoners of war. Most of the war happened on this side, right? Because they didn't bring us all over from Africa. We learned from chapter 47 that we were already here, right? So what they did was, a lot of what they was doing was shipping us, from up here down south, or from down south up here, right? And they would put us on, they might put us on a boat, right? And blindfold us or whatever, but it would be up the coast, right? It wasn't like a whole trip anywhere, right? But they would do that to kind of throw us off or disorient us. A lot of us was going to the Caribbean, right? If we was going from north to south, some of us was getting sent down to the Caribbean. I know for a fact that there were quote unquote Native Americans, as Moors, in the territory where we worship, which is Connecticut, that were kidnapped as prisoners of war and shipped to like the Bahamas in particular, right? So, and then we also know that they were sending some of them to Europe, right? Some of us was going to Europe. All right, so it says that after this, a certain Captain Clark had them delivered to him, promising they would be redeemed by the Moroccan ambassador residing in England. So notice that word though. Notice the language, right? What they using here. He says they would be redeemed. So this just what the prophet was talking about, right? We find that same terminology and that same word in our doctrine, right? And in the divine warning that we read at the beginning of Recall, right? It says in the last sentence, it says, "This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah, to redeem his people from their sinful ways." Y'all following that?
Islamism.
So we dealing with an example of actual Moors that were here in the Americas during a time that we know was our enslavement. As the prophet said, our enslavement started, or our servitude started in 1779. Right, this is 1790. Right, keep the time frames in mind. Right, you got 1740. They come with the Negro Act. Right, 1790. This is where it's really solidified. 1779, excuse me. Then in 1790, this is where this Negro Act, where you got these Moors that come in and they're petitioning to not be recognized as Negroes because they're subjects of the Sultan of Morocco. Right, the emperor at that time. And see, obviously at that time, there was a recognition of Moors being protected under that sultan. that no longer exists for us here anymore. So at that time, we had a government to be able to say, look, that's what we're under. We're subject to that. And they used the term that they were residents of the state. Right. I'm not sure why they use that terminology. You know, I wouldn't use that type of terminology now. You know, we worship, you know, near or at the state of blah, 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 blah. Right. Connecticut State Republic or Connecticut Republic. You know, we worship near there, or we worship at, you know what I'm saying? We don't reside or domicile in that republic. You know, just say, you know, just to keep it plain and simple, like the prophet said, you use an intelligent tone. You know, I worship in Connecticut. I worship there. You know what I'm saying? But again, at that time, there was a government in place that the Moors could, you know, point to as being subjects of. This is why the prophet gave us, you know, what he gave us to work with, which is a government. The same type of government that these Moors were pointing the South Carolina state legislature towards and saying that, you know, they were subjects of. So the same way that they were saying that they were subjects of the Sultan of Morocco and the emperor at that time, we as Moors now are subject to what we could say now is pretty much our Sultan, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and the Moorish Divine and National Movement. That's our government because, again, back then the Moors had a government to point to and say, we're subjects of that. Right, because there, you know, there were those laws in place, and we're talking again about the empire, right? We're not talking about the kingdom of Morocco. Islam sheep.
Islam family.
So, you know, there is a correlation, you know, between what it is that they was pointing out and what it is that, you know, we always talk about on these calls, right? It's about having a government in place. This was the issue that I had with one of the brothers online that we was talking about before the call started with, you know, the fact that you can still have a nationality, right? But if you don't have a government in place, you don't have a government that recognizes that nationality, then you're stateless, right? Like, again, that's why the prophet said that the Moorish Divine and National, it was through the connection of the Moorish Divine and National Movement, that you would be recognized. Well, he said there's but one issue for them to be recognized by this government and of the earth, and it comes through the connection of the Moorish Divine and National Movement, right? So you could say you're a Moor, you could proclaim your nationality, right? But if you don't have a government to point to, right, to enforce or protect that nationality, then you stateless because you have no, statelessness is not just connected to nationality, it's connected to your citizenship status. So if you saying you are Moor and you're not subject to the United States laws, what laws are you subject to? You can't just be out here freelancing. And that's the problem, right? They have no connection to a government. They have no civic duties. See, as Moors connected to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali and the movement, we have duties. This is what make us citizens of this movement, right? There are requirements that have to be fulfilled, right? These are your duties as a Moorish American under the Prophet's law. right? All true Moors will and must obey the laws of the prophet. That's what he said, right? Like, so, it's the same thing. We not doing nothing no different than any other citizen or any other nations is doing. It's just that our laws are religious, theocratic. We move like the Amish. We're supposed to move like the Jews. We're supposed to move like these other religious societies of people without amalgamating. That's what that's what hinders us, right? That's what is really hindering the movement. Is all the amalgamation, right? All of the dependence on the European system. Nothing wrong with his system. Like, we're not talking bad about his system, but at the end of the day, it's that no nation, like no clean and pure nation should be dependent upon another nation for its anything, right? And this is what I'm gonna get into a little bit further once I get through this, because this is dealing with an act that was passed or an act that was recognized by their government in relation to Moors that had a government in place at that time. Right? So it says that, again, they will be redeemed by the Moroccan ambassador residing in England and returned to their country. Instead, he transported them to South Carolina and sold them for slaves. Since then, by the great industry, and again, they put that in quotations. So that's probably somewhere in the actual deposition of these Moors. But what we supposed to be, Moors, according to the prophet, we supposed to be industrious, right? See, it's only through our great industry and being industrious that we're going to come up out of this. Because it's about finance. To be honest, at the end of the day, it's about finance, man. You know what I'm saying? The prophet said, in connection with our religious aims and beliefs, we must promote economic security. The preaching of economic security among us is by no means as widespread and intensive as the circumstances demand. No other one thing is more needed among us at this time than greater economic power. We don't need more nationality. We don't need more religion. We got the laws. We got all the books. The prophet told us who he was. The temple was put in place to teach us how to be ourselves. It was time to get busy. For real. Right? They purchased freedom from their respective masters. They requested that as free-born subjects of a prince. So free-born subjects of a prince, right? When you convert, right, under the laws of the prophet and Islamism, you become reborn. And it's a free birth because religion is the only thing connected to the word free under the Constitution of the United States. Nowhere else are you going to find the word free in the Constitution, but where it's connected to religion. Because we wasn't born free. If you was born with a certificate of birth under the state, and you got a social security number attached to that name on that trust, you was not free-born. This is why the prophet had to redeem us from our sinful ways. Because that's how he was born in sin. Sin is really like, it's just mean like it's really like being born in debt. Because that's what it is. You born as collateral for debt. All right, I'm gonna keep going. All right, a prince in alliance with the United States. So again, what's our problem with the United States? We could dig into this a little bit though, because with this right here, we got to deal with that 14th Amendment, where we have our issue, or not an issue, but like the prophet said, the 14th Amendment is not necessary for our salvation. The application of the 14th Amendment is not necessary for our salvation, because again, there was already laws in place before the 14th Amendment that made all men free and equal, like the prophet said. Right? He said at that time in 1865, the free national constitutional law that was enforced in 1774 declared all men free and equal. And if all men are declared by the free national constitution to be free and equal, since that constitution has never been changed, there's no need for the application of a 14th and 15th Amendment. Why would they have needed a 14th and 15th Amendment if before that time there was already 14th and 15th Amendment activity happening without the 14th and 15th Amendment? People was already citizens and people was already voting before there was a 14th and 15th Amendment. So why was it necessary? Why was it necessary to create these things? Why not just make these people full citizens? Right? Because they couldn't do that. Right? They was unable to do that. Why? Because the Negro didn't know his nation of origin. The Negro didn't know this is what the Negro Act was in place for, because the Negro Act was in place for those Moors that didn't know that they were subjects of the Sultan of Morocco. This is why the prophet had to put us on to certain things in the one-on-ones too. Right? Where he said, where is the Moroccan Empire? Now, even with the one-on-ones, right? And this is keys 32 to 33 or 34, where he said, where's the Moroccan Empire? He said Northwest Amexem, or Northwest Africa. So because they shrunk Africa to the little continent over there, and we think northwest of that is that little area where we know as Mauritania and, Morocco now, the kingdom, right? But the prophet said Northwest Amexem. What's Amexem? Amexem is the ancient name of Africa. So the prophet was telling us that we're not dealing with that type of Africa, right? We're not dealing with the Africa that they drew up after the Berlin Conference. You're not talking about that Africa. We're talking about Amexem, where everything was together before there was an Atlantic Ocean. Northwest that is where the Moroccan Empire is, which is where? Here in the Americas, North America. That's the key there. But he also put us on. He said, what is the title given to our ruler in Morocco? Sultan. Right. So we had a government in place during that time that was recognized as being here. Right. The Moors, again, at this time in 1790 in South Carolina, understood this. This is why they went to the South Carolina legislature and put in this petition, right? Saying that they was subjects of a prince in alliance with the United States. Again, what's our issue with what's our big issue with the United States government? Why Moors always bashing the United States? There's no real reason to do that, right? We have a treaty with them. Our ancestors, our forefathers and foremothers went into a treaty with them. right? Regardless of what they doing on their end or what we can, we can say they doing or not doing and this and that and third. That's not the prophet never put this on the US or the European. He told us to not speak aggravating or agitating against them and things of that nature. He talked about how the European was helping him. Right? The only thing that the prophet had a problem with the European was the use of the word Negro, black, color, and what we have now as an extension of that African American, etc. Right? That's the issue. Right? Which is a big problem. And for us, it's a tenet of our faith not to be referred to in that way, not to be identified in that way. And if we put you on notice and things of that nature about that, and you go about doing that, we're gonna hold you liable. This is where we gotta really, 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 really hone in on what it is we're supposed to be doing in these various territories, right? We need to open up these channels of communication with their governments. Like, we need to form a committee or a sub-ministry for, I don't know how to say it. What is it where, one nation or something like that communicates with another? And what's the person, like a liaison or embark? We need something like that. We need a person or a committee that can, draft communications to their various departments and agencies for various different things, just to put them on notice. So if there is an issue in these various areas, they've already been notified, right? This is something that I've learned from studying case law when in regards to consumer law, right? With consumer rights, right? You have to notify the lender or whoever you have an issue with of the problem, right? They have to be given due notice first. This is a very important step, right? And again, this is why I respect the ancestors during this time in 1790 to get recognition for an act to be passed. And again, this is one of the reasons why we call the Moorish Holy Temple of Science of the World free and sundry Moorish Science Temple of America. This is one of the reasons why. And again, the headquarters is in South Carolina, right? Another, fun fact, if you didn't know. But, right, it says that they should not be considered subject to a state law then in force known as the Negro Law, right? If they be found guilty of any crime or misdemeanor, they would receive a fair trial by lawful jury, right? Right, it says the matter was referred to a committee consisting of Justice John, whatever his name is. There's a little background about who he was. Served as an associate justice and senior associate justice of South Carolina's court. And it's funny, like they referred this to a justice, right? Like we've had certain issues with their certain of their legal departments, and they refer certain matters to other judges, right, or other magistrates and things of that nature sometimes. But he was an associate justice of South Carolina's Court of Common Pleas and General Sessions. Served on the legislature from 1782 to 1790 something. And then also Charles Pinckney, right, and another individual by the name of Edward Rutledge. Pinckney was a founding father of the United States. So again, Moors, they know who we are. Like one of the founding fathers of the United States sat on this actual petition. Y'all following this? Man, I swear, we don't know what we sitting on. The prophet, and again, the prophet restored this for us. All we got to do is come correct. That's all we got to do is come correct. They know, right? Military officer during the Revolutionary War, attorney, planter, and slave owner, a delegate of the Constitutional Convention. He was a signer of the U.S. Constitution and later served as U.S. minister, right, to something, whatever that is. And then this guy, Edward Rutledge, another American founding father who signed the Continental Association and was the youngest signatory of the Declaration of Independence. He served as the 39th governor of South Carolina. He sat in on the petition of the Moors for this recognition. So what these Moors did and what we need to be doing and focusing on in this day and time is nothing new. We have, evidence of high level officials that already knew about this matter, let alone from, what is this, 200-300 years ago? These were people that was at the top. Right? And we be scared to reach out to their government, let them know what we doing. Half of this has already been recognized. Right, it says Edward Rutledge reported from the committee on the petition on the same day, and the House agreed to the report, which read as follows. They have considered the same and are of the opinion that no law of this state can, in its construction or operation, apply to them. Whoa. See, it was bigger than just that Negro law. Listen to what he said. It says they have considered the same and are of the opinion that no law of this state can, in its construction or operation, apply to them. And that persons who were subjects of the Emperor of Morocco, being free in this state, are not triable by the law for the better ordering of the governing of Negroes and other slaves. So not only did that law not apply to them, again, they're saying, look, no law in its construction or operation can apply to them. So if anybody on their side really wanted to debate an argument about their laws and how they apply to us, we could just refer back to this. Let's deal with this. What was your forefathers in their committee considering and recognizing when they said what they said right here? Can y'all explain that to us? What did they mean when they said that they are of the same opinion that no law of that state could apply to us in its construction operation? Because then it says, and that persons who were subjects to the Emperor of Morocco being free in that state are not triable by the law of the Negro Acts. So that's like in addition to, just in case we wasn't really clear about it. It's the same thing for us now, Moors. This is why it's so important not to be amalgamated with them. Right? This is why it's important not to have those, those contracts and agreements with them. This is why it's so important that we have our own things in place. Right? We need our own, these ministries up and operational. They need to know that our ministries are up in operation. Their laws already recognize the free exercise of religion, and that they can't pass them. Again, they did nothing in this but reiterate kind of what the First Amendment said. Again, no law. That's the same thing. That's the same type of language that's used in the First Amendment. Congress shall pass no law with respect to religion or to the limiting the free exercise thereof. They can't pass a law against what we do, Moors. What's not clear about that, I don't know. You know, a lot of the Moors that's not, man, Moors that's in the temple and out the temple don't really understand that. Because if they did, especially the ones in the temple, we wouldn't have such a hard time with what we doing. Right? And the funny thing about it is, if Moorish Holy move like one of these de facto temples, that's nothing more than just a 501c3 with a Moorish Science Temple name on it, that be applying for state funding and federal funding. If we was like that, we'd probably be a lot further with what we do. But don't nobody understand this de jure religious corporation. People don't understand what a de jure religious corporation is and how a de jure religious corporation is really supposed to move. If they do, they hold it back. Shoot, to be honest, the Moors probably better off moving the movement to freaking Wisconsin or where the Mormons be at? Where the Amish and them? Pennsylvania or something, man. Because them states deal with people that are like that. Minority religious groups. We supposed to be afforded, what's up, buddy? We supposed to be afforded way more privileges and immunities and things of that nature than anybody else. This is the actual petition from the Moors right here. Right? A petition was presented to the House from sundry free Moors, subjects of the Emperor of Morocco and residents in this state, praying that in case they should commit any fault amenable to be brought to justice, that they as subjects to a prince in alliance with the United States of America may be tried under the same laws as the citizens of this state would be liable to be tried, and not under the Negro Act, which was received and read. And again, why would it be Moors during this time that had to go put in a petition like this? It's like where people want to argue about why we call ourselves Moors. Because we got precedents in this country of being recognized as such. And not only that, being recognized as such and not being subject to laws meant to enslave us. So why we run away from this identity? Why is there such a problem with being a Moor, calling yourself a Moor? It's precedence. It's in law. It's in the history books. It's in South Carolina, in the United States, in real time. Anybody can look this up. But again, there's a problem with it. Right? It says, Clorinda humbly showed that your petitioner some years ago past had the misfortune while fighting in the defense of their country to be captured with their wives and made prisoners of war by one of the kings of Africa, that a certain Captain Clark had them delivered to him on the promise that they should be redeemed by the Emperor of Morocco's ambassador, then residing in England, in order to have them return to their own country, instead of which he brought them to this state and sold them for slaves. Since that period, they have by the greatest industry been enabled to purchase their freedom from their respective masters. And now prayeth your honorable house, that as freeborn subjects of a prince now in alliance with the United States, that they may not be considered as subjects to a law of this state now in force called the Negro Law, but if they should unfortunately be guilty of any crime, misdemeanor against the laws of the land, against the laws of the land. See how they were specific about that? Right? Again, because when you look at the treaty also deal with the laws of that country. And I'm if I'm not mistaken, it also, I'm not sure if it specifically says the laws of the land in the treaty. But if somebody could pull the treaty up and get the specific wording where it deals with what laws is to be enforced or to be subject, that'd be cool. But again, this for reference purposes really only. You know what I'm saying? I'm not encouraging anybody to be enforcing no treaty and you know stuff like that. We don't even we don't encourage that. That's not how we teach. The prophet never mentioned the treaty. What he mentioned was the fact that we were descendants of those kingdoms during those times. Algiers, Morocco, Tunis, Tripoli, etc. Right, which means that there were other or more. Right, that they may have a just trial by a lawful jury. Now, again, in relation to how things are supposed to work, if there's an issue between us and a U.S. citizen, the same way that if there was an issue between a citizen of another country and a U.S. citizen or the United States, what do they do with that person? They extradite them back to their home country. It's supposed to be the same way with us Moors, right? Because this way we got to understand. You got to look at it this way, right? That's why the prophet say, just because you're born here don't make you a citizen, right? Because if you was born under the temple, you wouldn't have a social security number, you wouldn't have no birth certificate, you wouldn't have no ID from no state, you have nothing that ties you to being a subject of theirs. All of those instruments make you a subject of theirs. This is how they're able to identify you as their property. How you gonna say you this, that, and the third, and they pull up your name and boom, they go your face? You belong to us, Negro. That's the so again, if you was born in a temple the way we supposed to be born, right? You would have no connection to their government. They will have no jurisdiction over you. There is no jurisdiction over you. This is why they have a problem with quote unquote illegal aliens and da 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 da. They got to identify these people. Where you from? Because we got to send your butt back. We can't hold you unless you went through a lawful legal process to become recognized as one of our citizens, being subject to our laws and our duties and responsibilities. Because as a citizen, that's what you have. You have responsibilities and duties. That's what we got a whole chapter on that in our Moorish Holy Quran. Right? The duties, pardon yourself, Moor. Oh, yeah, chapter 30, the social duties. Right, we got a whole chapter on citizenship. You know what I'm saying? Right? It's a, when thou considereth thy wants, when thou beholdeth thy imperfections, acknowledge his goodness, O son of humanity, who honored thee with humanity, empowered thee with speech. and place thee in society to receive and confer reciprocal helps and mutual obligations. Protection from injuries. Protection from injuries. Who protected Negroes from injuries? We don't have no protection from injuries. That's why they treat us the way they treat us. We was not placed in their society that way. We were placed in their society as an, if you identify and recognize as a Negro, you place in their society as a subject. Right? Let me see something. Pull this up. I want to get the. Let's see. If either party be at war, any nation. No, if either the parties be at war, the prize, signal, be at war, examination. Any more shall bring citizens of the United States to their effects to His Majesty. The citizens shall immediately be set, restored, subject. If any more, not a subject of these dominions. The vessel without. Look, they use the term molestation as well. Just like the prophet said, we not to be molested. Right? This number 7, this. Wait, hold on. How they go from Article 7? Okay. They don't have Article 8, but that's Article 8 right here. Right, but it says, if any vessel of either party shall be put into a port of the other. Now it's funny because at the police station, you know what they call it? They call it a sally port. When they pull you up in there, they call it a sally port. Even a tow yard can be considered as like a port. Right. Of the other, and have occasion for provisions or other supplies, they shall be furnished without any interruption or molestation. We're not supposed to be molested by any citizens, any other citizens. If any vessel of the United States shall meet with disaster, any vessel of the United States shall be cast ashore. If any vessel, if we shall be at war in Christian power. You want ketchup? Yeah. I'm trying to find that language where they say something about the law of the country or something like that. Oh, here we go. If a citizen of the United States shall kill or wound a Moor, or on the contrary, if a Moor shall kill or wound a citizen of the United States, the law of the country shall take place, and equal justice shall be rendered. Interesting. All right. What happened to Um, 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 okay, so that's pretty much it. Um, so the reason I really wanted to show that, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with um uh, it's a group of Moors, right? That's in the Philippines. They call themselves the Bangs Moro, right? This is their actual website, but I'll get to that real quick. I just want to give y'all some background. Bangsa means like rice or something like that, and moro, well, moro means more in Spanish. Oh yeah, here it is, etymology, right? It says the recently coined term Bangsa Moro is derived from the old Malay, or Malaysian. That's what it's really saying. Just the language that they use. It's derived from the word Bangsa, or excuse me, which means race, not rice. It means race or nation, right? And Moro, right? The collective term for the various predominantly Muslim ethnic groups in the Philippines from the Spanish Moro, which means more. So again, that's the connection, right? So they basically call themselves the Moorish nation, the Moor nation. These is brothers and sisters in the Philippines. Now, this is what they look like. Look at some images. So y'all can see these the, oh man, what am I doing? These the Moors. They look fierce too, don't they? Like they look like they're digging something. Look, spears, shields, swords. See, he got the same thing you seen the Prophet Noble Drew Ali with. Turbans.
Satchel.
Huh?
Repping the satchel.
Satchel, yep.
Satchel.
Repping the culture. Now I don't know what this little boy got right here. Well, I don't know why he got a American flag. He got the American flag over there. That's what it looked like. I could be wrong though. It could be something else.
Islam, Sheikh. The average Filipino is caramel to dark brown skin. You only find the real fair-skinned Filipinos in heavily populated military areas like the Air Force, Navy bases, and in Manila. You know, that's where you see a lot of the mixing of the races, the amalgamation. But
Right.
other than that, you know, the majority of them are golden brown, the dark skin. Some of them have thick afros. Been there 5 times.
Right. Look, brothers ready to draw justice. Brothers ready to draw justice on something. Look at my man Big Toe. That joint about crooked, I don't know what. Yeah, but these, you know what I'm saying? These the Moors of the Philippines. Right? There's another group. turbans. See the garb. See, and he got the same thing. All right. The Moors of the Philippines. Yeah, there's other Moors too, right? So again, they have like a whole history of the Bangsamoro people, how they were able to create the Bangsamoro kind of identity. So it says like under the presidency of one of their successors, they drafted. It says a new draft for the BBL was made, and became legislated into law as the Bangsamoro Organic Law. Right. This was actually it was an act that was passed or recognized under Philippine law. It's a Philippine law that provided for the establishment of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, what they call the BARMM, right? So the reason why I'm showing this is because this is a correlation between they got an act passed, same way that the Sundry Free Moors in South Carolina in 1790 got an act passed to not be recognized as Negroes, right? And be subject to those type of laws. It's another instance of our brothers and sisters or our people doing a similar type of thing in their respective territory or region, right? They had an act passed, right? The Republic Act number 11054. That's what was able to help them create and establish what they established. Now, this is similar to kind of like what the Catholic Church did with the Lateran Treaty, right? The Lateran Treaty is sort of like an act that was recognized by the Italian government, or a law that's recognized by the Italian government, that gives the Vatican or the Holy See a autonomous region. This is the same thing that these Moors did in the Philippines. They was able to get the act passed to recognize them and give them a region. This is what this was about, right? So it says a plebiscite to ratify the Bangsamoro Organic Law was held January 2019 with the majority of the ARMM voters deciding for the ratification of the law. Right, so
Islam, Sheikh.
Yeah.
Can you have somebody look up plebiscite? It's a very important word that we must understand. Plebiscite.
Yeah, it's right here. Matter of fact, hold on, let me see. Okay. Plebiscite. Okay, well, they talking about their actual plebiscite. I thought that was the regular definition. Let's see. So it says a plebiscite is a direct vote of all the members of an electorate on an important public question, such as a change in the Constitution. The administration will hold a plebiscite for the approval of constitutional reforms. Merriam-Webster. a vote by which the people of an entire country or district express an opinion for or against a proposal, especially on a choice of government or ruler. To offer voters something other than a yes or no in the plebiscite over the charter.
Islam. So in other words, the people held a vote on this matter. You know, the morals that you were talking about, Sister National, they held a plebiscite and voted and organized these laws and presented to them, and they got passed and recognized. So our body, no outside body, participated in that voting process. The people of that jurisdiction collectively came together and voted to make that move. Islam, and I yield. That's a plebiscite.
Wow. Right. So even here, where they talk about their government, right? They have their organizational structure based on the organic law. The autonomous Bangsamoro government system is parliamentary democratic, similar to that practiced in the United Kingdom, which is based on a political party system. Well, that's different. The ceremonial head of the region is the Wali. The Bangsamoro Parliament selects and appoints the Wali. The Wali has ceremonial functions and powers such as moral guardianship of the territory and convocation and dissolution of the legislature. Executive, the regional government is headed by Chief Minister. Murad Ibrahim is the current Chief Minister, who was appointed by the Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. Oh, no, hell no. On an interim basis. The interim chief is also the head of the BTA, which also serves the function of serving as the transitional Bangsamoro Parliament. See, now I didn't know none of that. First off, that the government system is parliamentary democratic. Whatever that means. It's not theocratic, obviously. And I didn't know that it says that the chief minister was appointed by the Philippine president on an interim basis. That's very interesting. Once the first regular session of the Bangsamoro Parliament is organized, Chief Minister will be elected by the members of the Bangsamoro Parliament. The Chief Minister, so I'm guessing that they voted for a new chief minister, or they may have voted for this same individual again. It says he's the chief executive of the regional government and is assisted by a cabinet not exceeding 10 members. The holder of this position appoints the members of the cabinet subject to confirmation by the parliament. Chief minister has control of all regional executive commissions, agencies, boards, bureaus, and offices. Cabinet. The Bangsamoro cabinet is composed of 2 deputy chief ministers and ministers from members of the parliament. The deputy chief ministers are selected through nomination of the chief minister and are elected by the members of the parliament. The ministers in the cabinet, on their part, are appointed by the chief minister. They have council leaders, talk about the legislative, judiciary, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is the actual website, which I was on not too long ago. And So just interesting, just looking at, some of the stuff that they have, I'm saying? They got, news, right? Different things going on, talking about their national government, dealing with energy contracts, right? See what they talking about. It says President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. witnesses the signing ceremony of the Intergovernmental Energy Board circular for joint award of petroleum service contracts and coal operating contracts in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in the Muslim Mindanao. So this just happened yesterday, as a matter of fact. Cotabato City Department of Energy of the National Government of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao, Ministry of Environment, Natural Resources, and Energy, the MENRE, have signed Thursday, July 6th, a circular through the Intergovernmental Energy Board to jointly award petroleum service contracts and coal operating contracts to the Bangsamoro Autonomous, the BARMM. Circular aims to facilitate the growth of the energy sector and attract foreign investments in the region, and will kickstart the application process for PSCs and COCs, the petroleum service contracts and coal operating contracts in their region once implemented. It also outlines the requisite requirements, procedures, standards for companies seeking to apply for and operate those contracts and ensure. So again, the thing that I respect about this is that they formed themselves a government, however they did it, right? We can differ about the type of government they have, being that it's a parliamentary democracy, and that the chief minister was appointed by the president of the Philippines, or whatever the case might be. That we could dig in all that. That I don't want to miss the point. Right? The point in this is that they're being industrious. They're solidifying contracts between their government and the other government to be able to basically mine for petroleum and coal. Imagine, so just think about it. Like we already know what type of government we have. We were set up with, right? We know the laws in this country that protect that. And again, there's not to say that we can't do something similar or go about getting an act passed. It's not necessary that we even really do that. Again, there's laws in place that protect our autonomy. It's just not practiced by us, right? Like we that religious society and group that kind of, we don't exercise our creed in everyday life, right? It would be wonderful if we had societies or whole towns and things of that nature where it was just Moors, like, right, when you go outside your house, it's just turbans and fezzes. That would be ideal. We don't have that, but hopefully one day we could get there. But again, what they're doing is they're solidifying these contracts. And this is the same thing that the Mormons do, right? The Mormons, the Amish, they do the same thing. The Mormons be having contracts for, matter of fact, there was this big thing, I think, with the Amish, where because their children go to school up until 8th grade, right? Sometimes they don't even do that. I believe they have their own like training now from like kindergarten or whatever. But after that, they get vocational training, and then they're sent to work on like constructing buildings in major cities. And there was this big thing about with the Amish, because a lot of the workers that they were sending to work on these you know, on these contracts for building these buildings and stuff were underage. So they started getting a little bit of flack, you know. So again, you know, we're not supposed to have laws and that vary with the laws of the nation, town, or state that we declare, that the prophet declares a law. So you just like they don't have, you know, you can't have really like underage working and stuff like that. Like we gotta kind of respect that too. But nevertheless, they get busy.